I'd like to call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular Township Board meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024 at 7 p.m. to order. If we could all stand, face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, roll call. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Hornberger. Here. Trustee Vosberg. Here. Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Supervisor,
Trustee Anderson?
I'd like to approve the agenda with the exception of item 10B.
Is there support? Support. Support by Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Supervisor Kersten.
No.
Clerk Berry, no.
Item fails. Item 4, again, approval of the agenda as presented. Is
So
there a
moved.
motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
No, that was Vosberg.
Trustee Vosberg, supported by, is there any support?
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Item 5, presentations. I have no presentations scheduled tonight.
We need to take a,
Clerk Berry.
thank you.
Clerk Berry, the floor is yours.
Call roll. Trustee Vosberg. To
Aye.
approve the agenda. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
I'm sorry. Item 5, presentations. I have no presentations scheduled tonight. Item 6, department reports. Item 6, department reports. There are 2 scheduled tonight. I'll start out with Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So what we're looking at on the screen here is the investment report through 9/30 of 2024. In this illustration, the Tawny 10 Securities account includes a capital improvement fund, which will spend down as these projects are completed. And then the next slide, please. The next slide, this illustration includes the general fund, water and sewer, public safety, and trust and agency. As you can see, the weighted average yield is also displayed. The SAD for public safety is collected during the winter tax collection. Treasury deposits those funds starting in January, and public safety spends down those monies collected throughout the year, and this affects their weighted yield throughout the year. And then the final slide. The interest income through the end of 2023 was $1.8 million. The interest income through the end of September of this year was $2.2 million. That means the township has accumulated more than $4 million in interest income in the last 2 years. And then finally, I'd like to announce that today I was voted as the Macomb County Treasurers Association's treasurer. So I'm the treasurer of the treasurers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further department reports from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Some notes from our December 4th Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting. Police headquarters external renovations should be completed by the spring. Currently, progress is being affected by the reconfiguration of external utilities such as the electrical and other services being hooked up. The internal renovations, including the Detective Bureau, record and wellness rooms, should be finished by March of 2025. So noted, the ARPA funds are being used for these renovations. Several public safety items funded within their respective budgets will appear on tonight, as well as the board's December 17th meeting. Staffing updates. There have been interviews for both part-time fire and cadets positions, as well as police officer I'll mention it here, Carson Washburn will become a sworn member of our police department at our December 17th meeting. The Macomb Auto Theft Squad, or MATS, the acronym, it's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-law enforcement agency that's focused on auto theft, of which our department is a participant. As of this past Wednesday, they were investigating multiple auto theft cases within our department. And finally, was there Friday night, the 6th, for our tree lighting ceremony. It was outstanding event for all. Our public safety, both departments were out in force providing for the well-being, and understand everything went, except for a little bit chilly, everything went excellent. Thank you.
Further comments from the board? Presentations? Mr. Sonnenberg, floor is yours.
Thank you. I just have a couple, 5 slides to go through, kind of a high-level update of our construction projects. As Trustee Anderson had mentioned, this is the exterior of the police department. We're wrapping up these 2 sides, and we've been working on them for a while. Right, if you go to the next slide, Karen. This slide here can show you that we are putting in the panels facing town center. So the other 2 sides, although real simple, this side, as you've seen in the renderings before, has quite a bit of detail. So we'll be working on that the next couple weeks. But we're making good progress. We did take the next step with the DTE and the utilities, so you'll be seeing some progress on that as well. Next slide, please, Karen. You'll notice in this slide, we redid the front ephes on the front canopy. Just today, they started installing the new letters and logo. So although it's not complete in this photo, it did get completed today. So the new canopy is just about finished on the outside. Next slide, Karen. This was our building department counter. As you know, we're in the final phases, we're in the final process of closing out phase 1 here in the main ballpen area. We moved most departments to their full-time home, assessing, the building department, or building and planning, and treasury and others will be in their permanent home here now. The building department, the old building department, as you can see here, there used to be a counter, was all removed. This phase will go way faster. We will complete demo this week, and we will start framing next week, and we will do our in-wall contractors over the next week or so, and then be putting up drywall real soon. So you'll see great progress over the next couple weeks in this phase. Next slide, Karen. This slide represents our rendering of our new boardroom. This is phase 3. Our plan is to start this phase. We're going to have the last board meeting in January will be held here, and then the next board meeting and those moving forward will be held at the community center. So there will be more updates on this to come. You'll see we got some tape lines on the floor. I apologize. We're trying to lay out the table and the sight lines before we actually start construction. So we're doing our due diligence just by laying it out. We're meeting with several contractors just to make sure everything works before we actually start tearing things apart and putting things together. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7, public comments. Public comments on agenda items only. There is a 3-minute time limit. If you would, please state your name for the record. It is not required. Just help us keep track. Mic is open.
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. In regards to the bill run, there was a charge to the residents, to the taxpayers, for $12,425.12 for the magazine that gets mailed out for our community magazine. The issue that I have, there were several residents in the community that did not receive that magazine, and I was told that registration started at 8 a.m. today. So I'm not too happy about that, especially when we pay top money for the residents. Under regular agenda A, for the compensation of the elected officials, Not happy with that. The elected officials want to give themselves a raise. The supervisor wants to go to $115,000 per year. The clerk wants to go to 105, the treasurer 105, and the trustees to 13,000. So I don't know anybody in this room that works that can give themselves anywhere from a 10 to an 18% raise. I don't know anybody. If you do, please come up and let me know, because I don't. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're doing it now because it's December and there's a lot going on and people aren't paying attention in this community. So that's why they're doing it now. Not happy with that. I am definitely not happy with item B on adding a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer. You know what? We got an all-Republican board, and I am ashamed of the majority of these board members, because I've got Republicans on this board that are growing government. They don't know anything about cutting back and less spending and being fiscally conservative. All they know is how to grow government and waste the taxpayers' money in this township, and I'm sick and tired of it, and the residents are sick and tired of it too. These are not full-time positions. These are part-time positions. So I've got a clerk and I got a treasurer trying to create 2 new positions in this township. So again, the attorney said that this position's only needed if the clerk and the treasurer are sick, if they're disabled, if they die, or if they're not here. It's a part-time gig. We've had other employees that work in the township that were paid a stipend, that did the job, and we never had an issue. So again, I am not in favor of that. And item 3, as far as the finance department on the 25 budget, I seriously asked the residents to take a good look at that budget. So it's not a good budget for 25 for the township, and I seriously doubt that they're going to explain this budget in detail. So that would be a no. They definitely have to go back and revamp that. So again, this is your elected officials doing absolutely nothing for you.
Yeah, good evening, Janice Young. Item 10A, the pay increase for everybody up there. I did a little bit of math, did it kind of quick, so hopefully I got it right, but looks like the supervisor's asking for an 11% increase, and the clerk, treasurer are 14%, and the trustees are 18%, and the stipend would be a 20% increase. That's pretty hefty. I did look back through the budgets, and it looks like for the last 2 years, they did not receive increases. The trustees did, but the other board members did not. The 2 years that there were records on there, they only got 2% increase each year. So I'm not sure how you're coming up with 11%, 14%, and even 18% for the trustees. Even when the trustees got an increase, it was 5% and 4%, not 18%. So the supervisor's asking for 115,000. It should be more like 110 based on my numbers. And the clerk and the treasurer are asking for 105. It should be closer to 97.8 based on my numbers here. Item 10B on the deputies, I know we had Michelle Liza as the deputy clerk. She's a full-time employee, and she served with a stipend as the deputy clerk, and I don't see why we can't continue to do that. Maybe an increase in the stipend. Maybe she wasn't getting paid enough for the amount of work, but I think it's asking a lot for the residents to have 2 new full-time employees added. And as Mr. Speaker mentioned, you guys are all Republicans up there, but I really wouldn't know it based on the way you govern this township. You act like a bunch of Democrats up there, spending our money and growing our government.
Wendy Jones, Chesterfield. First of all, thank you all for the position that you have. I know it's not easy sitting up there, and I don't think it has anything to do with a political party, the decisions that you're making. I think that's absurd. However, I do think it's also absurd that we are wanting to put 2 new jobs, a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer. That is not necessary. If you want to spend money like that, perhaps we put it towards our public safety. But your jobs, you agreed to do what you're doing when you put your name on the ballot. You knew what your job was, and you've known what it is for the last several years. So adding a deputy, that's wrong. It's wrong what you're asking the residents to pay for. And again, I know what you do is not easy, and I appreciate you, and I thank you for what you do for our township, but I'm asking you to think real seriously about this and what you're asking. It's wrong. Table it, you put it on the agenda for the last minute, 4 o'clock today you come on. Give the residents a chance to come out and speak. That's what these public hearings are for. You didn't give them that opportunity today. That's all I have to say. And I do wish you a Merry Christmas.
All right, Mike Morton. Actually, going off of what the last speaker said, actually, I want to point out there is no public hearing on this, on the budget. It's just a regular agenda item, and it was it does seem like that was kind of slipped in at the very last second on these types of things. I actually am not fully opposed to the idea of the deputies. Looking at, I'm going through all of the budget requests on here, and I guess from my understanding, it looks like the majority of the funding for it is being carved out of the past budgeted administrative staffing, if that could be clarified. I'm not entirely opposed to that, but this is something that I think needs to be more clarified to the public. I think right now, as it stands, this looks like a PR disaster for the township as very, very poor communication. It does look like you're creating almost duplicate or redundant positions for the already elected positions. And I think just more clarification and more communication with the public is more at hand here. I think that's probably the biggest problem facing this budget right now, is it does kind of look like, you know, smoke and daggers behind closed doors. And of course, you know, for more than a year now, I'm always going to keep on mentioning it. The 3-minute time limit up here is another hindrance to that. People have a right to say as much as they need to regarding the issues, especially for a year-long budgetary proposal. And I would hope that you guys in a new board will address revisiting that time limit again. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments? Move on to item 8, the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 26, 2024. Approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department, and to receive and file the quarterly treasurer's report.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Is there any support?
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Discussion. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9, public hearing. There is no public hearing scheduled tonight. Item 10, the regular agenda. Item 10A. Clerk Berry.
Item 10A is to adopt resolution number 2024-36, establishment of the 2025 through 2028 compensation of township-wide elected officials, which is an amendment to APO number 07-2018.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion. Any discussion? Clerk, Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just like to point out the discussion regarding compensation has been had over the years, and it's been very fragmented in terms of how the increases, and every single time they come up, it's a political nightmare. It is very, very difficult to have a discussion about compensation, and I think 2 years ago, there was a proposed amendment to the APO. Supervisor Kersten and I were not on the greatest of terms, and we got into a debate during that discourse about what the attached union bargaining unit should be, and we ended up saying, well, we'll just freeze everything, and I'm good with that, and you're good with that, and that's what we did. I think the APO that's proposed, and I know Trustee Vosberg, you called me on this a few weeks ago and said, would you be opposed? And I'd like to look at this, and I'd like to look at that. There are a number of things that are kind of resolved and solidified in this APO, and I appreciate the work. Again, the discussion about the full-time salaries, I don't know from the comps and the neighboring communities, they are very consistent with communities our size. In fact, on the trustee level, certainly the annual, when you look at some of the neighboring communities, the annuals and the way that we're compensated by way of per diems for meetings or committees that we attend, you're not paid if you don't show up. You're not paid if you don't go to work. So I do appreciate that. And I know the salary of $13,000 for me, and I know in discussions with some of the other trustees, when I break it down for the hourly rate, bless you, I would do, from a financial standpoint, I would do tremendously better if I went over to Home Depot and worked there, because from an hourly standpoint, we put a tremendous amount of work in, and we certainly don't do this job for the money. In terms of the full-time salaries, if you look at, again, comparables, and then what was the attraction for the job during this last election cycle? There was a lot of unopposed candidates that are now seated, and you wonder if you don't make the job somewhat palatable from a compensation standpoint, what does that look like? And then this APO also does away with having to re-discuss this. It's never a good discussion. Some boards handle it in a different way. They appoint a committee to evaluate, and it's just an extra step. It's never an easy task, and I'm not opposed to the APO amendments, and I thank you, Trustee Vosberg, for reaching out and having some collaboration on this. I think all the elements that we talked about were in here, and I think it's a solid APO amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Barron, do you have anything? Any other comments from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Okay, Court MTA. Qualification to run for supervisor, clerk, treasurer, trustee in Michigan. You got to be 18 years of age, U.S. citizen, an elector or a resident of the community you wish to represent for 30 days. You don't have to own land. You don't have to own property. There's a bunch of other things. No talk about a level of education. You can run it if you win. My feeling about these raises or the pay altogether is, yes, there should be some remuneration for the time invested by the people up here in this Diaz. At the same time, there should be a degree of community involvement. What are we doing for just besides just sitting here worrying about our hospitalization and how much we're getting paid? Anyhow, I don't support it, and I'll stop it right there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Earlier in some of the comments, the percentages that were presented by the public weren't, some of them were accurate, some were not. The way I'm looking at it, I'm truncating, I'm not adding the tenths or the hundreds percents, but it was 11% for the supervisor and trustees, and it's 13% for the clerk and treasurer. There wasn't, I think 18 was mentioned or something like that. That's not accurate.
Thank you. Any further comments? Just some comments from me, and I got to echo what Trustee Joseph said. There was a lot of time and effort spent into this. This wasn't something haphazardly put together. There's discussions. How it is presented is always ugly. Again, I have to thank Trustee Vosberg for bringing it forward, and Trustee Joseph, obviously, as he stated, we were in a bad place, and we're trying to fix something that affected several other people. My main mission behind this is to do exactly what Trustee Anderson said. Unfortunately, some of the boards and commissions that you see below are difficult to fill. And the boards and commission aspect of this is to do exactly that, entice some residents to participate and offset some of the costs and dedicated time that they're going to be, that this running this municipality consumes. So that was really my mission behind it. I thank the input from everyone else involved, and I think, again, to restate, I think it corrects maybe a misstep a couple of years ago, and I'm going to be supportive of this. So with that being said, any further comments, questions? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 10A. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger.
No.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Good.
Yep.
Item
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
Item 10B.
Item 10B is a recommendation for the Board of Trustees to approve job descriptions and compensation for the offices of Deputy Clerk and Deputy Treasurer.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Is there any support?
Support.
Support by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry.
This item is before the board at their request. It was requested at the last meeting that our human resource consultant, Eric Herpich, take a look at this and then provide a job description. So he's been speaking with Treasurer Elliott and I, and this is what he delivered to us today. Apologies for the lateness of it. We wanted to try to get it in the hands of the board before they voted on the budget. That's the intention here. I can't speak to the human resources elements of it that he included. I'm not an expert in that area. But the language is his, and I trust that he took everything into account when crafting that for us. The salary and benefits schedule was drafted. If that looks familiar, that was drafted by Attorney Siebert. And so we just included that as well. Trustee Vosberg had mentioned she would like all of it in one document, and so that is what we have delivered to the board this evening.
Just for point of clarity, Attorney Siebert, I think, did you mean he originally drafted it, or?
Yeah, just the salary and the benefit schedule that was taken right from the resolution that he had drafted last time.
Okay. Any further comments? Trustee Ornberg.
Yeah, I have questions about, well, actually the compensation, now that we just voted to increase the compensation for our elected officials. We're going to, if this is approved, pay these positions $84,000, and yet we have no basic qualifications for the positions. I went ahead after I received this after 4 o'clock and did some quick research on just what other positions that were posted around the state in the last year. And they do include requirements, most of which include a bachelor's degree in accounting, business, or public administration, finance, or a related field, at least 5 years with some financial experience. These were for treasurer. The same things pertain to the clerk positions that I pulled, and I can happily give them to you. That you can consider an equivalent, in equivalent degrees, but I'm bothered that we have no qualifications listed, no expectations of qualifications are listed, and yet we're gonna pay someone to come in and make $84,000 a year, which is a substantial salary. I can't support this as it's written. I'm dumbfounded that it was brought to us this way, quite honestly. There aren't even minimum requirements of an associate's degree, bookkeeping experience, accounting experience, elections experience. It doesn't even mention, you know, having any experience in BS&A. I'm a little dumbfounded. We had this discussion last week. Our last meeting, I've heard from no one since then. So I'm a no on this unless those things are amended or changed.
Thank you. Any further comment? Trustee Joseph?
No, the comments that Ms. Hornberger points out are legitimate. I thought we had talked about qualifications, you know, inclusive. They are certainly determined by the elected officials. They would serve at the pleasure of, I understood that part, but the minimum qualifications is solid. And then the other piece that I was most concerned about is the impact to the existing employees and the employees in those units now. And so the component that I would have hoped was, and I thought I mentioned it, but if I didn't, I'll mention it again. I thought there would have been some consultation with, you know, we have I think, solid rapport on many levels with our union officials, union leaders, and having some communication about this is a relatively new role in that it's being more more defined, and also there's a significant salary. I think in the previous roles for the deputy treasurer and the deputy clerk, the salaries were probably commensurate somewhere in the neighborhood of this when you combined the, you know, paltry stipend and the full-time job. But this removes the union protected sort of pay and shifts everything into an at-will and at the pleasure of the elected official. That's certainly going to have an impact on the existing staff and some coordination with the union officials in terms of does the deputy clerk's powers, which are the same in essence if designated by the clerk to act in her stead or his stead and future clerks, the direction and the management of your department, when I say yours, I mean you, Ms. Berry, but certainly Ms. Elliott as well. When you're managing your department, you're directing the staff that are appointed to you or designated to you. Ultimately, they answer to the supervisor, but day to day, they answer to the elected official. Would that management sort of capacity also extend to your deputy? Could your deputy then direct your staff? And to me, if that answer is yes, and that's the way you envision running the department, I certainly think that it should include some letter of understanding or some directives being shared with the unions, and that doesn't seem to be in place in terms of this description. Trustee Anderson and I received emails from some employees, and I'll let Trustee Anderson address that in more specifics, but it's clear that from the last time we spoke, I didn't have any communication with anybody in the formation of this, and I actually returned from vacation. I try to squeeze a vacation in between board meetings, so I came back late Sunday, spent the weekend just sort of reviewing the budget in preparation for this. No mention of this particular agenda item. Had a mountain of things on my desk when I got to work on Monday, as you know everybody does when they return from a vacation. And then late in the afternoon, I started getting, text messages from residents who said, why would you allow this, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when you've been talking about it for so long? It comes out literally hours before the, it's unfortunately, it's not quite there yet for me. I think we're going to need to keep working on this because in its current state, it's missing some components. Again, consultation with the union and some minimum qualifications, as pointed out by Trustee Hornberger, I think, at a minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson? Okay, the email Trustee Joseph refers to, we all received on this DIAS tonight after we received the two documents, clip art put together on the positions of Deputy Clerk and Deputy Treasurer. It was sent by an individual claiming to be an employee here, and it's titled Anonymous out of fear of retribution. I am not going to reference it. I would ask my fellow board members before you delete it to maybe take a look at it if there's any truth to it. It's sad. We have many qualified. I would say all the employees here are qualified. The entrance level to get hired in Chesterfield, there's expectations to get on this job. There's an understanding or a belief in most institutions, once you get in, you should have the capability at the point of hire to go up in that, in the position you hold, the higher ones. Might be some education or training involved, but that's part of it. That's not the case here. There's 5 pages of job descriptions, 80 grand a year, at-will employee, 457, health, all the bennies that the employees have. And I just kind of concerned, we have a tremendous workforce here. They're not even being considered. They're going to have somebody floating around the office here that, and I don't know, I'm sure our trustee and our clerk are good people. I'm sure they'll have good hires. But, there's always a wonder about, I mentioned last week, family member, friend, political operative. I don't know who's going to fit these positions, but I would hope that this board would use some thinking on this, like we talked about before. $3,000 a year for an employee to take over the job is peanuts. Make it 20 grand. You have a tremendous workforce here. Our employees could petition for the position. Our 2 elected officials could choose the most qualified person that they would want to fill those positions that are necessary 4 times that they act in the stead of the elected official. If the elected official is sick, absent, disabled, or dead, then they take over the position. Is that a full-time job for 80 grand a year and all the bennies? I don't know. Anyhow, I say I'll just let it go there. If it doesn't pass tonight, we'll see it again and again and again. And hey, make it 20 grand a year. On the other end of that, you're saving the additional $200-some thousand a year, a good hunk of that, for 2 other employees, at-will employees. Thank you. Clerk Bear.
Just for a couple points of clarification for the public as well as for the board, these are not new positions. They've been in existence. They have to be by law. They're required. If it seems like it's redundant, it's because it is. It's meant to be. That's why the legislators wrote the law the way that they did, because in the event that the clerk or the treasurer are not available or able to perform the duties on any given day, there is continuity of operations. That's what it's all about. Also, these positions are not jobs. These are office holders. Just like these offices, they are described as office holders. So they hold an office. They take an oath of office just like we do, and they hold an office. They don't just get a job. There's a huge distinction there, that these are office holders. So these are officers, and the offices that they fill are directed by the elected official whom they will serve in their stead. So for Treasurer Elliott and I, we are going to choose deputies who we feel enough trust and confidence in that they can act on our behalf, speak on our behalf, work on our behalf, and that's not just anyone. So I know when I first got here, This position had been significantly convoluted. There was no other deputy in the state structured the way it was here, and there's a reason for that. It came out of the result of a union negotiation at the time, but the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer have always been recognized as non-union office holders. The only difference is the amount that they were compensated for that, and the fact that up until recently, it's always been, and just through the nature of how things worked out, a full-time employee who also was an office holder as the deputy. Now, that created a number of problems from an operational standpoint. And it was recognized fairly early on that that needed to change at some point. And so now that the two long-term, or what had been long-time deputies stepped down, one through retirement and the other through choice, that left vacancies that had to be filled. The problem was that this had never been resolved. This issue had never been corrected. And now here we are, finding ourselves in a position that we now need to appoint these office holders, but need a way to pay them. The law states, again, that it is the board who has to choose that. The board has to set the salary. The salary and compensation package that's been suggested is consistent with other similarly situated communities, both here and throughout the state, and we provided that in the packet 2 or 3 meetings ago. I think there were 10 or 12 in a salary survey that we selected for the same size population communities. Same number of registered voters, relatively speaking. The Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Townships Association, the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks, I think also the Association of Treasurers does salary surveys regularly because all boards throughout the state of Michigan have to make this decision. And so to assist them with that, they provide that data. So they collected the data and then we presented that to the board, and again, it was in one of the previous packets. So it's not out of line or out of step with those. And each elected official has the opportunity to choose a person of their choosing. I do not know, I'd like to know the communities that Trustee Hornberger is referring to that are townships, elected officials. I can see possibly where cities might have more authority in that regard, but where they require degrees and things like that, because then that, no, Texas here, township. Yeah, so I mean, I just have never heard of any that have additional requirements unless, of course, the elected office holder agrees to those. That might be something that they do, but I'm just not familiar with it. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that I wasn't familiar with it. So, but these are not new, and they are required by law, so it's nothing that you have an option on. The office holders, the clerk and treasurer here are full-time, therefore the office holders that are their deputies would be full-time as well, and that's what I would expect. So I will have a number of requirements on my deputy, but that may be different than what another clerk might have. They may have completely different requirements. So this is meant to address the office, not the individual who's sitting in the seat right now, but that this would address the office for whomever is sitting in the seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Further comments? Further comments? Treasurer Elliott?
I've already spoken round one,
Yep.
so I don't know if Treasurer
Treasurer Elliott, that's waiting.
defer to her.
I feel like the truly what the issue is maybe the percent of the full-time elected officials' salary. And I think that's where the issue is because these, we already have had some numbers thrown around, and it sounds like 80% is just not a number that this board is comfortable with. And I do believe, as somebody had pointed out from the public, that actually this has already been carved out of our current budget, and and I do appreciate you pointing that out, and that is true. The supervisor had suggested a number and in the budget, and I believe that number comes to about, well, previously was about 40% of what the elected official's salary is. And I guess that if that's what, really what we're looking at is, it is the number, that is a number that, you know, could, for me, I've always said, the 80%, we can get around that, and we'll adjust to full-time, but if the number is more like a 40% number, then we adjust to that. But what we're asking is for the board to give us a direction on that number. Getting into the minutia of every minor task gets to be complicated because, as Clerk Barry said, each person has, will have different strengths, or each elected official has different strengths, and they're going to more than likely hire to their weakness, right? So that depends. Those kind of move. But the number is what we're looking for direction from the board, and that's why the item continues to come up. And that was carved out of the budget, and it has been already. So I believe that's truly where the issues lie.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph?
For me, it's not. I'm okay. I think the salary range is within reason, so it's not the 80% for me. Not to replow the same field. I agree with Trustee Hornberger. Some qualifications, independent of where and who determines them. Clerk Barry, if you have a if you have a set of minimum qualifications and you would like to take the lead on it, by all means, put that in there. But I think if you're going to be a deputy treasurer, have bookkeeping or accounting experience. If you're a municipal clerk, you know, I don't know what degree you get for that, but you know, you are true. You are correct when you say that they are office holders in the same way that you are. But one major distinction: they don't go before our bosses. They don't go out and campaign. And if those in the audience who spoke, and some of you come to meetings on a regular basis, recall this was talked about last year, and the discussion that we had publicly and caucusing with one another was, I wasn't prepared in any way to vote to increase the elected officials' sort of ability to hire or appoint their deputy at a full-time salary, 6 months out from an election, when none of us could have been, we all could have been replaced. And so this was a discussion that we waited to incorporate in the budget discussion and at the beginning of our term. I think it's appropriately here. Again, not to replow this field, but I purposely did not read the letter, the email, and I wasn't going to, and I'm not. One, because it comes from an anonymous employee, and I do understand the anonymity request and the fear of retribution, but I think it is important to throw a couple of these points out. A resident who spoke talked about adding full-time employees. Clerk Barry, I thought you addressed that. This is not an add. It is simply reclassifying who that individual works for. They would appoint their deputy. That deputy would then work at the pleasure of the elected official, treasurer or clerk. That's different than all other employees in the township, in that currently everybody answers to the supervisor, who has statutorily approved day-to-day operations, including staff. But this employee points out, and this will be a problem for us, because the transition to the way it's been, to the way that it's being proposed, is going to be unique to the current workforce that's here now. They have to, in essence, work next to somebody that they see as coming in and sort of leapfrogging them, and in terms of like their years of service here. You go, well, now the elected official just brings in somebody that makes more than me, and they don't even have to be here 40 hours a week, and they don't have to do what I have to do. But it is very much an appointed office holder position, And in time, I think that will be a routine part of the election process. When you go to the polls and you vote for a clerk, you're also voting for that clerk to have the power to appoint a deputy. So that is a major change, and it does require, I think, some extra attention. And when you have employees that seem to be fairly organized, and I'm not saying that the employees should dictate, policy, but when you have employees that are pointing out and sending to elected officials, deep concerns about the toxicity of their work environment, and they're pointing out that your deputy doesn't even come into the office because of what they classify as her comments of saying the office is toxic, I think it warrants a discussion with the employees. The explanation that you gave to the board and to the public, I would like to think, and just putting myself with a small amount of empathy, I've been a trench guy my whole career, and I have deep respect for the employees who I think in a lot of ways, we had an insightful conversation with a long-term employee, and they referred to us as travelers. We are travelers in their life in that we are elected for 4 years or 8 years, or some of us hang around longer, but in essence, they do all the heavy lifting. They do all the things that make this township work, and they will be here when we're gone. A new supervisor or a new trustee or a new comes in, and they have to adapt and change, but their core function remains the same. They do all the work. I think it's a bit of a slap in the face to not have staff meetings and conversations with your people and talk with them about what this change looks like. And you don't have to get agreement. You don't have to get consensus. You don't have to get, but the tone of this email really speaks to some work that needs to be done in terms of employee relations. And I think that the discussions about who's going to do what in the department and their roles can't just be, it's going to be what I say because the people elected me, and now I'm appointing a deputy, and that person acts in my stead, so whatever powers I have, they have, and deal with it. I don't like that, and it seems to be the tone that's coming from the staff. I think it warrants an informal discussion and maybe an understanding whether you're obligated to do it or not statutorily. I think it would be wise to have some discussions with the union and explain what this new role would be so that people aren't confused and wondering why somebody can come in, leapfrog them, and make $85K with full benefits and no expectation that they have to have the minimum qualifications that they have to have in order to get a lower paying job, and also what the amount of time that they need to be in the office is. For the employee to say that the current deputy is here less than 15 hours a week, and then you're going to say, well, that individual not only is going to go from $20 an hour or whatever we're paying them now, but to $85,000 with full benefits, and they're still not have to be here any more than they're already here, is problematic, and it should be something that we focus on and we talk with our staff about. They deserve it, and I think it's warranted and appropriate.
Thank you. For the trustee Horn, second round.
So just real quick, the information that I pulled was from Texas Township. It's a recent listing, and it's actually for an hourly employee, an hourly deputy treasurer, and it lists everything out, including your MCL that you guys have kept citing. But for $21 to $27.50 per hour, I mean, I hate to go down the rabbit hole, but with a $6,000 stipend, they're requiring someone to have a bachelor's degree in accounting, business management. I mean, I think it's sad that we are expecting this deputy, whoever it may be, to step in and be able to direct employees, and yet want to hire this person and pay them $84,000 with benefits just based on whether or not we like them. Like, they don't have, there are no stipulations. They don't have to have an associate's degree. They don't have to have experience in accounting, in elections, in any training, and even using BS&A as a tool in the workplace.
I'm sorry, but I need to clarify something when you were speaking, Trustee Joseph. Do we already also have assistants in place and now we're hiring a deputy? I'm confused.
If I could just answer that specifically, from my understanding and the email that we got from the employee, they talk specifically about in their department of 5, there are 3 managers, and and in the other department in the Treasury, it's 3 to 3, 3 managers and 3 employees. So I don't know, and this doesn't really clarify, if we're talking about a completely additional funding of an additional employee on top of those existing employees, or is this going to assume the role of one of the current FTEs? So the short answer, I don't know.
I'll clear that up. It would be a new position, a new funded position. There are current deputies that are in both offices that are paid a part-time wage, and they are considered part-time employees. And again, the clerk and the treasurer, it's their selection, who they pick, and as has been stated previously, the qualifications are basically dependent on who they choose to fill that role. And that's how we operate currently.
Mr. Supervisor, just for clarification, so the two deputies that are serving in that capacity now, they only receive compensation from the township, either somewhere along the lines of that stipend, or in the interim, we went to an hourly rate, but that's their sole compensation. They are not current employees that are union and receiving the stipend. So assuming that they would continue to serve as in that deputy role under this proposed, if it passed, you would just be adding that salary and benefits package to the budget.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Trustee Warner?
No.
I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 10B. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Hornberger.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 10C.
Item 10C is to approve a request by the Finance Department to adopt Resolution Number 2024-22 to approve the 2025 fiscal year budget.
This was presented in adjourned from a previous meeting. Ms. Bauer, do you want to start off again? Can I interrupt you real quick? Item 10C, after you read it, Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve item 10C. Is there any support?
Support.
Clerk Berry will support it. I'm sorry, Vicki, go ahead now.
All right, today we are looking at the 2025 recommended budget. Our first slide here is the budget calendar and process outline. As you can see, it is a year-round process. Input is given at all levels and from every department. It starts early March with our capital improvement program. In September, another highlighted one I'm going to, we start having one-on-one meetings by request from the board members. We did take this, as mentioned, already to the October 22nd board meeting. There are 7 funds that are being adopted for budgets. The one I want to highlight is the Capital Project Fund that was new in 2023. It will run probably through 2025. The level of budgetary control adopted by the board is at the department level. We do show line item detail just for greater transparency, but again, it's by department total. This is those 7 funds again. I'm going to highlight that capital project fund again. You can see the revenue is about $200,000, which is interest, and the expense is $5.8 million. That's because in 2023, its first year, is when the bond proceeds came in, so that accounts for that difference. The total revenue for those 7 funds is approximately $54,872,000. Here's our general fund revenue pie chart. You can see our largest group is the state shared revenue at 38%. It's approximately $5.4 million. Second is our grants at 27. That's up from previous years. But a big item in here is the Anchor Bay Pump Station grant. Our third largest is our tax collections at 13%. Here's our general fund expenditures. Our largest pie of our 19 groups listed out here is our general administration at 22%. That usually incorporates our bond payments, medical, life insurance, legal, audit, and the like. Our second largest one is the Anchor Bay Pump Station at 21%, but that corresponds to the previous slide that we saw having the large grant revenue for the Anchor Bay Pump Station. Our third largest is our facilities and operations at 12%. Here's our public safety fund. This slide really just shows you that most of our, or 92% of our revenue comes from tax collections. It's approximately $17,937,000. Our public safety is broken down into 4 departments. We have our police department, dispatch, fire, and administration. Here's our building fund revenue. This, as you can see, is 99% permits. Our largest one is building permits at 71%. And then we have our electrical, heating, and plumbing permits that follow. Here's the expenditures for that fund. This is a service entity. We don't make anything in the building department. So as expected, the majority of our costs are employee related, and that is at 88%. Also with this, and on our website, we have the draft copy. Once the budget gets approved, we will put the official copy. But we have quite a large book that has a lot of detail from a lot of departments that the board has been provided. And again, it's available to the public. In here is also our fee schedule that you're going to be approving with this motion. That is my brief summary of it. I know we've talked extensively about this budget, but if there's any questions, please let me know.
Just some things I want to cover in the proposal. You'll see the memo that I drafted to address or attach to this. Just understand, and I hope that everyone understands, we take a lot of time and a lot of passion and a lot of dedication from the department heads to work on this budget. And as you see from the previous schedule, we're going to begin in the next budget cycle right in January. This budget reflects a modest growth. I've said that before, and then a capital investment plan of a little over $4 million in the areas of water, sewer infrastructure, both new and replacements, obviously public safety, improving our GIS systems, our records management systems and packages, and then along with fire station, parks and rec, and social location improvements. So again, there's an understanding. We're budgeted in the previous year for about 219 full-time employees. This year, we're down to 202, plus the elected and then part-time and summer help. It's my goal, again, to try and reduce the count through employee count in necessary positions, but again, that's something that we'll continue to manage. There's always growth and there's always opportunities that I think we can take advantage of in staffing areas, and we'll continue to do that. And related to the previous conversations, we've got great relationships with our labor unions. We've got great open dialogue with them. We'll continue that. We'll continue to work with them in whatever areas that are necessary. And it is my hope, again, this budget, our draft has been out there for some time. A lot of time and effort's been put into it to get it to this point. So again, my hope is that it's approved tonight in its capacity and draft. With that, any questions from the board? Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A question, the two previous motions were pay regarding elected official pay and the two deputy pay. Is funding for that included in this proposed budget?
No, it wouldn't be because they were just approved and this budget's been working for quite a long time. The budget in total is about $54 million in revenue, so I'm not saying that, just in perspective on the size of the increase versus the overall budget, it is not in here. But it is something that we have a mechanism, as you guys know. We do amendments twice a year. Any amendments that you guys do now will just be folded into our regular routine adjustments.
Okay, do you have the dollar amounts that we just approved in total?
Unfortunately, I don't. I did not see or did not go over any of those calculations.
I would like to see those included in this budget rather than, we know, I mean, justification could be, we know it's coming, so we can adjust the budget later, I understand that. But I also would like to just have this budget reflect the changes that we just made.
So, if you want to, I'll amend the motion to incorporate that. One of the issues that, and we discussed this today at length, was the employment package depends on who it is. So that's a discussion once identified. It's going to have an impact on this if you want exact numbers. What we had discussed is we can, if this is approved, we can make those general, we can come pretty close with it. I'm reciting what Vicki is indicating.
Well, I mean, especially exactly what Brad is saying. If you have an employee, because that has a family, because if medical is included, if they have a family, that's one price versus if they're single. And so, without having all of the details, having the exact amount, again, I understand the want to include everything into the budget. We could even, my suggestion is to not change it on the fly, because typically as you're changing things just on the fly, things kind of get a little bit mucky, because it's like, how much was that and what numbers and what line items. And again, I'm not trying to make it seem like a trivial amount or anything like that, but for a $54 million budget, if we're talking $20,000, it's not material. And so my recommendation, whatever the board decides, we will do, of course. But my recommendation is to know that we have those adjustments, and that at our next time that we make adjustments, we do that. Or even, if you would like, I'm going to be bringing back the budget amendments, the year-end budget amendments for 2024 at the next meeting for the 17th. I could absolutely have an amendment to that budget at that time if that would be comfortable, but at least then we would have an opportunity to make sure it's right. I could sit down with the different departments and get those amounts.
All right. Excuse me. Thank you. Based on the fact I heard the word the phrase is immaterial, it's kind of not that large of a percentage, so I'll just let it go for right now. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, just, I realize a lot of work's gone into this budget. The areas of concern for me aren't really in the creation of the budget and the putting together of the budget and the work that's done by the finance department. It is more of a structural decision that in terms of how we're funding things. Our capital improvement plan, as Supervisor, you highlighted, there's an earmarked or an intended several $1 million. I don't know exactly in water and sewer, but we know that they could use, as much as we can send their way for infrastructure. The amount of revenue that seems to be collected for depreciation of our underground infrastructure certainly doesn't match what we're putting in terms of repairs. So whatever the percentage is that our residents pay on their water bill and sewer bill that goes into the enterprise fund, we take into consideration that that dollar amount is reflective of what we anticipate the underground, the infrastructure to be depreciating at. This is, pipes have a lifespan, and if it's 40 years or 50 years, the commodity rate or the per unit rate that residents are paying on their bill is reflective of not only the cost of the water, but also the cost of the sewage and the public service workers that work on the lines and their salaries and benefits. Those are all part of in essence, the water bill. Another big part of that is the depreciation, and I don't know what the number is now, but it's certainly reflective of at least a few $1 million a year that should be going into capital improvement every year. And I appreciate, under the leadership that we have now, a more forward-thinking, plan. For my early times on the board, we were really just doing everything on an emergency basis. We didn't really respond to things until there was an emergency. And, we have skilled people who have rightfully pointed out that when we do fixes on an emergency basis, we're paying higher rates than we would if we had incorporated that in a more meaningful and comprehensive replacement program or maintenance program. So I see us moving in that direction, but what I'm worried about, and it continues to be a problem for me, is it's very difficult to discern what is facilities and operations and what is what was formerly referred to as DPW. It's now a public service department, and I have continued problems with what residents, I think, expect is part of their water bill, but it really is encompassing more, and it's difficult to subtract in this budget. It's difficult to see, for me, where the depreciation money goes in terms of actual projects. I appreciate the supervisor's comments that will get better, but for me, it's very difficult to look at our enterprise fund and look at what we charge residents for depreciation and then what we actually do in capital improvement, and some what I would consider to be, and it's just fundamental debate. It is commingling of departments, and it becomes very difficult to discern who's doing what. I had hoped that the incorporation of BS&A would give us more data in terms of what projects were being done by who and what parts and what funds they were coming out of, and that, has been a little slow to get here. I realize there's a lot of training with that, but for me, it's difficult there. And then the other area that I have difficulty with, as it relates to the general fund, not going to relitigate it or debate it, but we took on arguably what could be seen, and I've spent a lot of time over in that building, but our community center, I think in terms of the amount that we paid for the building and the land, will serve the township well in years to come. But it's, I think, it's not entirely wise to not take into account what we know from our engineering studies to be a real problem that is just right around the corner. And I don't know how we take on that in this budget. I don't think that we have a sustainable revenue stream based on what we have coming in now. And we're taking a lot of things out of the general fund, and over the last few years, and certainly in the last year, between ARPA money, grants, outright gifts from legislators, minus those, I don't know where we would be. We would be really, I think, in a lot of trouble. We're spending a lot of money, and we've been blessed to have some of these grants and some of these awards that come from the feds and the state. But I don't think that we're sustainable in our current expenditure sort of profile here, and for those reasons, I'm not in support of this budget. Thank you.
Any further questions? Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of things. Under capital improvement, I noticed that Microsoft 365, that is not on the budget until next year, until 2026. You and I have had extensive conversations about the need for Microsoft 365. Is there a reason why that's not on the budget for this year, for the 2025?
Pardon me?
Microsoft 365, I noticed it was on for capital improvement.
Yeah, just the cost. It's a drastic change, and it's a substantial investment, and our IT network just isn't there yet to support it. Is it in the capital plan? Yes, it is. Is it gonna happen this year? It wasn't planned for this year. But
Okay.
again, it's on the list. It's on the list of improvements that are needed.
Okay. And then also, as far as I noticed something, both because it was on this bill run and then also it's in the budget, the Chesterfield connection, it's actually a great, it's a great magazine. I know that a lot of folks are using it and reading it and enjoying it. However, one of the things that I don't understand is how they're billing us and they're also selling ads. And I don't ever remember them coming before the board and discussing that with us. I would like to know how that Chesterfield connection, they're billing us and they're selling ads, and I'd like to have a presentation before the board and an agenda item before the board from Drive Creative on how that process works. Not that I have a problem with the publication itself. I think it's been a great resource, but I don't understand. I need to know the numbers of how much the businesses are contributing and how much we're being billed. So, and then I also had a question on, are we still working on having whatever extra ARPA funds are left over, bringing something at the next meeting on the December 17th meeting?
Yes, there is a small amount that has yet to be allocated, and it is already been reviewed to come to the 17th meeting.
Okay. And then what is the general fund balance at this time? What percentage of the budget is that at?
What percentage
Yeah.
of the?
Do you have a general?
So our general
amount?
fund balance, the estimate for 2025 is 10,720,000. So, as far as, I mean, I guess the percentage of revenue, it's at least 50%.
Mhm.
Are you looking
So,
at?
yeah, it's still at about 125%. Is that what we're still at for general fund, right?
Yes.
Yeah, at about 125% funded, which is more than healthy, as the auditors have stated several times, correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So if we wanted to put, say, Microsoft 365 in, or if we brought it up maybe even mid-year, that would be a possibility then.
Absolutely. If you guys
Okay.
brought up an amendment to the budget, we do that twice a year. Or you can actually, we also have a mechanism, like with our fire truck, what we did, you guys got an awesome opportunity, it sounded like. And so at that meeting, it wasn't mid-year or year-end, but we didn't have enough budgeted in order to work around to wait for those. So the amendment came with the budget agenda item, so that could also be a possibility.
Okay. And then also I noticed a couple of things on page 79 under the Township Trustees that still needs to be updated. Those are things that once you finalize you'll update pictures and names and things like that on that page, correct? I'm assuming.
Yes, no,
it
and we've
wasn't
already
oversight.
started. So the numbers are static. You know, obviously the numbers aren't gonna change. The fee schedule is static because those are the things that you're voting on. But you know how we have a new trustee in place, we've already put her picture in, we keep making adjustments. And the final budget book will have any of them. But if somebody sees, this is a huge book. This is a lot of work that goes into it. So if you do see something, anybody, we encourage, let us know, because we want it to be as close to perfect as possible. So I'll take note of that, and will reach out to you tomorrow to make sure that we get any of the changes that you had seen. Most likely, we've already made the changes in sitting there, because again, for Ms. Hornberger, we've been updating that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any further questions? Trustee Joseph, just some comments that you made I want to make sure that we're clear on. As you can see, there are 2 capital improvement plans for water sewer updates that are $3 million each. What you will see coming in January, we just initiated the discussions today, and I am looking to restructure the administrative side of the water sewer DPW, and I don't know what that looks like right now, but I plan on spending the beginning of 2025 absolutely doing that, and getting a better grasp on depreciation side. There is a subject that emails, I think the last email page I got is over 800 pages. There's some good information in there. There's some other things that might be well-intended that we're going to look at. But again, to that point of kind of rebuilding it, and I think that's the direction that we're going to go in. And just another piece of information that was stated here, there are several service agreements that I think we have in 20 plus contracts existing right now, 19 of them which expire in 2025. It is my intention to create a QBS team. We'll hopefully the elected individuals, elected body here participating in and reviewing every single one of those contracts. That process has already begun. Towards the end of the year, we're kind of putting it together. January, we'll begin that process too. So we're going to have a very busy 2025 administratively. And again, back to my comment about HRC and the water study, we're just waiting until Thursday to see how the legislation passes on the $2 water fee. We've been in contact with all of our legislators, both for and against, and along with Commissioner Miller's office, and it's going to be interesting how that impacts or where that eventually falls out. So our Midwest Strategy Group is actively engaged in that, and that's also going to have an impact on how we roll forward here. So I'd take any other questions from the board if there's questions on the budget. Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, Ms. Bauer, excellent presentation as usual. Thank you very much. I agree with pretty much everything Trustee Joseph discussed regarding this budget. Still have a concern about a couple of those issues. One thing, this is the second meeting of the new board that'll be around till 2028, and I cannot see the damage, and I know it's a DOA, but I cannot see the damage of having a separate town hall meeting on the budget, which affects our township. I know it won't go anywhere, but I'd like to see what the outcome there is, the input of our residents. There are some wise people that live in Chesterfield. Anyway, I'm not prepared at this time to support it during some of the articles that have been discussed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10C. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Hornberger.
Yes.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 10D.
Item 10D is a recommendation from Supervisor Kersten to appoint the following board member liaisons to the various township boards and commissions from January 1, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Election Commission, Clerk Berry, Trustee Anderson, and Trustee Vosberg. SEMCOG, Supervisor Kersten as delegate, Treasurer Elliott as alternate. Zoning Board of Appeals, Trustee Hornberger. Senior Board, Supervisor Kersten and Trustee Joseph. Streets, Sidewalks, Pathways Committee, Trustee Vosberg. Public Safety, Trustees Joseph and Trustee Anderson.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Trustee, motion by trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Discussion? Treasurer Elliott?
Mr. Supervisor, the only one that I have did want to state concern for, or just an observation that I've made before, is on the senior board. I think most of the folks that are use the senior services, there's a higher percentage of females, quite a bit more, and there is no female representation on that advisory board,
On which board is that?
senior board.
As far as elected, or the body that will be selected?
As far as elected.
The body that is selected is all female, along with the director. So,
Mr. Supervisor, I'd also like to point
Trustee
out,
Joseph?
sorry. I guess we can't have 3 microphones on at the same time as what's going on. The entire panel is female, and the meeting is chaired by our Parks and Rec Director, Ms. Vanderson. So I don't know what gender-specific issues are being left off, but I think it's been a non-issue. There has been no gender-specific issues discussed that I can recall, and I think the flow and the conversation of of those meetings is probably the most productive meetings that I sit in on. The representatives that are on that committee are active seniors, and the work that was done by Ms. Vanderson to look through the committee members to get a cross-section of individuals who participate in different events is really a great benefit to the group. So if you're talking about a group that's in there, say on Wednesdays or Tuesdays, or yoga versus cards, you'll have a panel member who can speak directly to the needs and interests, whether it's more comfortable chairs or the flooring in the yoga room, or you have people who are well-versed. And the other thing that I would, since we're talking about the senior committee, is the amount of work that our Parks and Rec team does on behalf of the seniors, and really all of the programs that go through Parks and Rec. Every single event that I've been, witness to or was involved in the discussions about planning are the most dedicated staff I've ever seen. If there's in the fall, there was an Oktoberfest, and I think the entire staff came dressed with, Oktoberfest-related, costumes that they worked on themselves, and they prepared food, and they just go the extra mile. So it is one of the most rewarding committees that I serve on, and I don't know the concerns that you have regarding male or female. No offense, it seems absurd, because the meeting productivities have been really just exceptional. And I would point out, Ms. Vanderson, you really did a nice job putting that together. You and all the other females in that room, exceptional work. So, thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott? Okay. I have a motion by trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve the appointments as presented. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10E.
Item 10E is to approve a recommendation by the Human Resources Department to opt out of Public Act 152 for the 2025 calendar year and adopt resolution number 2024-35.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by Clerk Berry. Everybody's pretty familiar with it. I don't need to discuss what it is. It's an opt-out, mandatory negotiated in our contract. So, discussion from the board. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Item 10F.
Item 10F is to approve the 2025 Charter Township of Chesterfield meeting calendar and adopt resolution number 2024-33.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Discussion. Any comments? Clerk Berry?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Hornberger. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10G.
Item 10G is a recommendation to enter into a one-year contract from January 1, 2025 through December 31st, 2025 with Mad Habit Creative LLC for the production of bi-monthly board meetings and one township video at $8,400.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there any support? Trustee Joseph? Maybe in the renovation, when we upgrade the electronics here, we can fix it. Discussion. Trustee Joseph?
Thank you. I just want to say the Mad Habit creative team has really done an incredible job. For those of us that have been on this board for a while, the amount of difficulty that we've had in terms of production and getting decent video and sound to the public has been, it's been a crapshoot for really as long as I've been on the board. And with the exception of a few events, which I think one was more weather related than anything, since they've taken over the production, I think the quality and the ability for our residents to be engaged through their work is well worth their contract. In addition, I would just point out, initially when they showed up and their contract had a carve out for some additional township videos, I was skeptical, and I didn't want those to be political in nature. I didn't want it to be a political theater, and I'm happy to report, in my opinion, it's not. And the videos that are put out on our social media have been, very quality productions at a really relatively low cost, and they are extremely informative. And there's a lot of, being honest, people that don't like you or don't like me, they're going to say whatever they're going to say, but the updates that go out through the video production, there was a video that was done with our Phragmites, and we had our staff out demonstrating, those are valuable things, and you can't just duplicate that with a camcorder or an iPhone, and they're a quality organization. They've done a great job for us, and I appreciate them very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to add on to that, in light of your comments and being aware of that, most of our videos are produced internally and with high school interns from Anchor Bay. We've been very successful bringing in high school interns. I'm trying to draft a partnership with DECA. We've met with them. I'd like to use more interns from all school systems, get them in here and at least offer them some sort of education and utilization of those skill sets. So Amanda, Karen is the staff. They orchestrate it, they coordinate it, and again, being mindful of trying to be apolitical, just announce what's going on and get off the social media. So I appreciate those words, and we'll continue down that path. Any further discussion, comments? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Joseph, to approve item 10G. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Trustee Vosberg,
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott,
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 10H.
Item 10H is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to authorize Halt Fire to replace the foam pump on Fire Engine 3 at a total cost of $10,050.88.
So move.
Motion by trustee Anderson, supported by trustee Vosberg. Chief Miller, you want to tell everybody what this is?
Good evening. We come before the board this evening requesting support in effecting repairs to Engine 3, which is stationed at the 23 Mile Road Station. What we have is an onboard firefighting foam system, which uses non-toxic foam, which is the only kind that we have in the Chesterfield Fire Department. And this will be used to basically make our firefighting efforts more effective. This is in place on Engine 1 at the 22 Mile Road Station. So this is a maintenance issue that's come up this year that we need to deal with.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a motion by trustee Anderson, supported by trustee Vosberg to approve item 10H. Clerk Barry?
Trustee Anderson,
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg,
Aye.
Trustee Joseph,
Aye.
Trustee Hornberger. Aye. Treasurer Elliott,
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten,
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 11, addendums, there are none. Item 12, public comments, 3-minute time limit again. If you would, please state your name just for record-keeping purposes only. It is not required. The mic is open.
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. What we've seen here tonight is, again, to no surprise, we've got Treasurer Elliott always trying to play the gender card and the sympathy card. My suggestion to you, your concern should be making sure that the residents receive their correct winter tax bills. You don't bounce checks in your office, and you can balance. So, and we collect the right revenue. That should be your concern. Unfortunately, Chesterfield Township, you reap what you sow. This is what we're going to have for the next 4 years as far as the board. I could tell already it's going to be a 4-3 board. The township work environment, yes, is very toxic. It's been very toxic and hostile for a long time. So, Dave, I mean, shame on you for not reading that anonymous email. I mean, you know it's the only way that employees can communicate in such a toxic environment. When I get an anonymous email, I open it up, I read it, and then I try to verify the information. So if anyone deserves a 10% plus increase in this community, it's public safety. Our men and women that put the uniform on and protect this community, not the elected officials, whether or not they get up in the morning and decide if they feel like showing up or not. No, it's our men and women that put the uniform on. They deserve the increase, and I will always look out for them. And I seriously doubt, because I've gotten to know Attorney Seberg, that I seriously doubt that Attorney Seberg came up with that compensation plan. That I'm going to call bullshit on, because there's no way that Attorney Seberg would come up with that. If you listen to Attorney Seberg the last time, that's a part-time position. So there's only 4 circumstances that we need a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer. And all these years, we've been doing it with a full-time employee here, and we've been paying a stipend, and it's worked. All of a sudden, it can't work. Yeah, we're required by the state to have a deputy treasurer and a deputy clerk. Now, it doesn't say we're required to have a full-time. What you guys did tonight, you added 2 full-time positions. Don't BS me. That's almost $500,000 in the next 4 years that you have added onto the residents here. So that's a lot of money. You may not think it's a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. So what you did was wrong. You gave yourself raises. It's wrong. It's just the chaos and the craziness just continues. And nothing's going to change till we change the majority of the board.
All right, a couple, sorry, a couple of things I'd like to address regarding tonight's meeting. First and foremost is it does feel like it's goes back to probably a thing you guys probably sick and tired of me hearing this or saying this consistently, but it goes back to trust. It goes to the notion of the way the things were inserted into the agenda, I guess, regarding the pay increases and the establishment of the deputy positions and things of that nature. It's not that the debate up here is the problem. It's good to have that. The problem is that it's not fair warning for the residents, and it's not proper communication. I'm going to get into a quick anecdote here. I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Idea Factory, and it's about this time period for a few decades in the last century where AT&T, under the Bell system, if you remember it, it was before I was even born, but when they had the monopoly of the phone company, they dedicated a large portion of their revenue towards a research lab. This research lab was filled with scientists and technicians, and they just had to work together, communicate, discuss things with almost no restrictions and no budgetary restrictions, no deadlines or anything like that. And they ended up creating radar, the transistor, most computer programming, nothing to do with telephones, but they created a lot of the future just because they wanted to. And that's the whole key thing is communication and trust with each other and proper debate, discourse that necessarily has to come about. It's not just between the people on the board, but also within the community and the proper outreach. This creates trust, it creates respect, it creates it showcases the responsibility of government and how citizenry can be properly activated within that trust and within the body politic. With that being said, regarding what we saw tonight, it was a breakdown in trust, I guess, because something was mentioned about how the monetary compensation would not attract the best people to run for office. But in my viewpoint, this is coming from someone whose entire adult life has been in public service. That's the whole idea, is public servitude. It's not that you're supposed to come here for money. You're supposed to do it because it's the right thing to do. It's because it's proper application. You serve in the government because it is the right thing to do, to have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You don't do it just to make a good paycheck. If you want to do that, then go make money in the private sector. I do believe you need to have steady income working in the government, but that's not what you do it for. You do it to serve your fellow citizenry. Thank you.
Any further comments? Further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Ornberg, how'd you like to start tonight? I'm good. Trustee Anderson, how'd you like to start tonight?
You can say a lot, but it doesn't matter. Mr. Joseph, I don't know if they call this travelers or transient, I'm not sure. See everybody a week from tonight. Be careful.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So, first speaker during public comments, you reap what you sow. I understand the sentiment, but you also have an obligation to respect the electorate. So we get a report card, if you will, every 4 years. I may disagree, you may disagree, but ultimately it is the decision of the voters, and at some point you have to respect the will of the voter. It doesn't mean that you cease to have independent thought, but the
the voters elected the individuals here, and in some cases, overwhelmingly. So I don't want to spend 4 years campaigning for the next gig. And if I take issue with every single thing, if I take exception, there really is no more debate. I'm just an outlier that's managed, and I don't want that. And so in the areas where I have disagreement, I will express it, and I will try my best to reserve my opinions on the intent of why somebody else is voting the way that they're doing. From past experiences, it always ends badly when I start to believe that a deal was cut. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't, but to go into the debate, it gets very difficult. I do agree. I don't like the communication and the idea of trust from the second speaker, Mr. Wharton. There's obviously, I think, a mutual understanding. It wasn't a comment to say that the salary should be commensurate with, this. It's of course public service, but at what point does public service then also become? We shouldn't rely on the charity of the public servant. There should be a metric. There should be a comparison. And so when you compare to other communities, it's on par. And the elected officials got no pay increase over the last several years. So this was an effort, and I didn't put the exact dollar amounts, but I don't think they're out of line. And speaking for my own salary, I can tell you that. Well, I said it during the deliberations, but I realize that nobody does it for a paycheck, and I don't think that you could get a CEO to manage. Finance director talked about a $54 million budget. I don't think that you could get a CEO to manage a corporation or a company of that size with the amount of employees that the supervisor has at $115,000. It's just not possible. So I don't think that the salaries are out of line, and I think that they were overdue. I'm okay there. Last, if I could, the disagreement with the deputies. I think there does need to be some cohesiveness, and I know that the idea that the stipend system has worked is not true. There's been incredible internal problems associated with who reports to who, and the endeavor to fix that was something that there was, I think, general consensus on the board. We, of course, only vote when we're in public, but in talking with my colleagues independently, I think there was a general consensus to try to fix that. We just had disagreements on exactly how that was fixed, but in the interest of moving forward and smooth deliberations in the future, I'm glad that it's resolved. It wasn't resolved in the way that I would have selected, and Supervisor Kersten, I got to believe that it wasn't entirely the way that you wanted it to go, but the idea of peace was something that was also on the table, and trying to find some common ground for your fellow elected officials when it hasn't always been an easy process was at least resolved tonight. At least I hope it was, and I think that that went into the decision. Again, it didn't go exactly the way that I would have wanted, but I hope that we have a 2025 where we can have more deliberation and discussion, even when we're at complete opposite positions. I hope that the dialogue stays in a place where we can actually have decent outcomes. So I'm okay with most of it. So thank you.
Trustee Vosberg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank all of the employees and all the people who worked so hard the last few months, but it's became especially noticed in the past few weeks, moving from back and forth. Now, the people that work in this building, most are back in place, but while that's going on, the holiday decorating was going on as well. And I think we had a great event Friday night. A lot of people came, and I just still hear comments about how nice everything looks. So thanks to everybody for that.
Treasurer Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just my comments about the Senior Advisory Committee and my question about that was only simply because that was brought to me at the beginning. I'm glad to hear that things are going well on that board, and I'm glad that we had come to some conclusions tonight, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
I have no comments tonight, thank you.
Just some things I want to follow up with. Trustee Joseph, you are absolutely right. It is not exactly where I wanted to be, but I was tired of talking about it, and we had to come to some resolution. I would have liked to have handled it differently, but I eventually just removed myself from it and agreed to support whatever was brought to the board. And again, did I get what I wanted out of it or what I thought should happen? No, I did not, but 5 times to the board need to be put to bed. We'll see where it goes. And on that side, we'll sit with management, union, and we'll discuss that. They know what's coming. They're aware of it. Labor attorneys have already been engaged in this, so we'll work through that process. It's not going to create a toxic environment. Everyone here is professional. The unions are professional. We'll sit down and work through all of the issues that may arise, or if no issues arise. I'm very disappointed in SMART, in our progress with SMART. Got an email today that was completely disheartened. I'm going to speak to the other supervisors around the township because I think our vendor, Richmond Lennox EMS and Jeff White, have been shortchanged again, and we were provided with an agreement that I don't personally like, so that went sideways today. I'm sad to report. I want everybody to be aware, and I'd like the electeds, fellow electeds, to understand there's a lame duck session in Lansing right now, and there are some bills that they could have drastic impact on how we operate and how we budget. And I think whether it be roads and funding to mandatory staffing to all these the quick the $2 meter rate fee is going to be jammed down our throat in some capacity. Again, that is something that we all need to be paying attention to because it is going to impact how the township operates here. And particularly, to what Trustee Joseph said, depreciation and water and sewer service. I too want to thank all the employees across the board for the last year. We have been very busy. To put on events continually at all departments, to function daily, and then to live through a renovation that has done, that we've tried not to interrupt anything, but to maintain a high level of service for our residents and function, it's difficult. So as we close out this year, one of the goals is that I have is to report on all the successes that we've had. I can do that, but I can't do it without the employees, the department heads, and keeping them active and engaged. So we'll continue to do that. With that being said, just so everybody has a heads up, there will be a closed session real quick next week just to discuss the similar topic, just so it's on your radar next week at the meeting. So with that being said, I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there any support?
Support.
Motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Barry to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. 8:57.
That's what I got.